Morning, everyone. I just want to start with our recording today for our webinar. I'm Ezra Steenkamp. I'm the chairperson of the Training Forum South Africa. This is our second talky-blog. And today we're going to talk about BEE and skills development. It's one of those topics when I normally start with a pack of Bernardos because it's very complicated and it just sits in. But I've got one of these guys. Our guest speaker, one of our guest speakers had to cancel last minute, but we've got another guest speaker here, Keegen. I know Keegen also for a long time, and whenever you post a question to him, he always got the best answer for me. Keegen, can you quickly just introduce yourself to us? Tell me your experience and something about yourself.
Yeah, sure. Okay, hi everybody. My name is Keegen Chetty, and my wife and I, we run two businesses. One is a consulting business where we do BE consulting, skills development facilitation, and employment equity reporting. And we also have a training company that specializes in training unemployed, disabled youth. So my background is I started out in skills. I then got into BEE, and because of my strong skills background, it was easy for me to adapt to the BEE environment. So the two goes hand in hand, basically. So, and I will try and keep it as simple as possible. There is no need to use big terms and stuff like that. So yeah, shoot with the questions. Everybody, I have in the chat, I've listed 5 points that we can discuss here today. I'm also happy if you do have technical questions. I will try and help you and answer them, because ultimately that's the purpose of this, is to answer these difficult technical questions and not just give a brief. I think Ezra knows me for this as well. I mean, everybody knows the legislation and the basics. So your technical questions, I don't mind answering. The lady that was supposed to join us was a verification manager, a technical signatory for a SANAS verification agency. She couldn't join us because it's financial year end coming up now. Feb 28th of Feb is the cutoff here. So we've got audits that need to be completed before the 28th, and we've got companies that need their planning done before the 28th of Feb. So that's why it's a little bit of a busy time for us today.
Welcome, Keegen. Thank you for that introduction. Just before we also start, we have our STF groups, and we have reached out to a couple of people, different areas for the webinars, and anyone is welcome to add or to contribute to a future webinar. And so we don't want to target specific companies or promote specific companies. It's the people, when we reached out, they volunteered to help. So Keegen, I know this is a crazy time for you. Many thanks for your time. I've seen your list. I just got one or two questions I want to ask you before we're going to start with your question. And the first one is, I've got three basic questions I want to start you before we're going to start with your list. BEE, BEE, BEE. What is the right thing, please? Because like everyone asks me this thing.
Look, we just call it BEE because it's simple, but it's actually B-BBEE, broad-based Black economic empowerment. So it's just a shortened term by people saying BEE. That's the low end, that's all it is. They've just dropped the two B's from the beginning and the dash, essentially. But it's the same thing.
Okay. But if you're talking to a BE agency, they should maybe use the correct terminology. I don't know.
Look, again, it's about convenience. It depends who you're talking to. Everybody just calls it BE because it's simple. You know what I'm saying? Even the verification agencies will say your BE audit. They won't say your BBEE audit. It's just your BE audit. So yeah.
Okay, so for the guest speakers, if you get to your BEE verifier, ask them what is the correct terminology. If he doesn't know, then you know the right answer. Keegen, I've attended a workshop, second question, 2 years back, just before Corona, through one of the professional bodies. And he was also a BEE speaker, a guest speaker. And a guest speaker opened the morning and said, you don't really have to worry about BEE unless you want to work with the government.
That is not true. So you require B for a number of things. Yes, one of them is to work for government. Another one is, for example, if you want a liquor license, you need to have a BE certificate. If you want a petroleum license to open up a petrol station, you need a BE certificate. If you want to access funding from the DTI and various other government departments, you need to have a BE certificate. If you're a JSE listed company, you also need to have a BE certificate. So what that means is, even though, for example, Bidvest needs to have a certificate, one of their requirements is procurement, which means their suppliers need to have a certificate. And let's say you were doing transport for Bidvest. It means that you would need your suppliers to have a BE certificate as well. So it's a knockdown effect, essentially, and it's not necessarily for government work only.
So in other words, if I'm a small company, or maybe one or two people in my company, and I've got a BE status, these bigger companies can benefit from using me as a supplier.
Yes and no. It just depends on who the other suppliers are. So it's a bit of a, each company is different in terms of the amount of spend. Like, for example, in the training field, generally, it's not a big amount, in the grand scheme of things. So it just depends. It's more about, how can I say, for example, I'll give you another example, like Toyota or any car manufacturer, that have a plant in South Africa, they fall under the automotive industrial scheme, where the government gives them huge tax rebates and benefits and those types of things. But now the requirement is for them to be a level 4 BEE to maintain those benefits. So if you are providing a service to Toyota, right, and you're only invoicing them for, let's call it 100,000 Rand for that training. And they had the attitude of, look, it's 100,000 Rand in the grand scheme of things, of 5 billion Rand, it's not much. But if you have that same attitude with all the 100,000 Rands, it starts adding up to 1 billion Rand. You understand that they're short. If you go and then say, but if 100,000 is not a problem, then 10 million is not a problem. You understand? Yeah. Then you have the problem of now you're sitting with 3 billion Rand of unaccounted for spend. So I think it's a different way that I'm answering your question, but this is where it falls in, that you might say, oh, my 10 grand is not much, but it all adds up at the end of the day.
And then the last question, Keegen, BEE is for companies. So companies is worried about BEE. So what is training providers and STFs got to do with BEE? Where does training providers, because whenever we go, I go to a company and I speak to their training manager and I ask them for their BEE level, they don't know. They don't know. STFs is also a bit concerned because a lot of STFs, BEE is a great thing. They don't work with the BEE consultant. So where does BEE link in with training providers and STFs as a whole?
Okay, so as a consultant and also as a let's say from a point of a verification agency, we generally try and get information from one source, from a company, right? And the person we generally deal with would be generally the finance manager or the finance director. Okay, because B is all about money. You know, the over and above the skills, there's other elements. Like I said, for suppliers, you need to know who the suppliers are. You need a supplier ledger. The financial manager gives it to you. So we generally don't deal with individual staff. What we normally do is we'll give the financial director or the MD, for example, of the company, a list of requirements. And the basic list for skills development is we need the EMP 201s for that financial period. We need the latest WSP and proof of approval. If there's no proof of approval, then we need the previous year's WSP and that one's proof of approval. The next, so that information, there is no need for the SDF, because all the guy has to do is send the SDF or whoever the HR manager is, I want these documents. The next thing we'd ask for, if there was training, we'd want the invoice and the proof of payment, which is what the financial manager would have. You understand? Again, if they've got learnerships, the financial manager would have the payroll report with all the people that's on a learnership.
So basically you're saying a BEE consultant or verification agency talks to basically the STF, and if I ask a training manager, they don't know their BEE level, or the STF doesn't know if their company have a BEE level, or don't ask you for those type of things, then I see question marks, because what you're saying, they need those people for the info. And if your STF...
No, but I'm getting to my point now of,
Yeah.
so far, I've only been speaking to the financial director
Yeah.
or the financial manager. I haven't spoken to the SDF training manager or any of those people. So I've got all that information without them being part of that process. You understand?
Yeah.
So this whole process can happen without those people knowing. The company can get a certificate without those people knowing, right? And why does the company have to give the staff the BE certificate? So it is, in a lot of cases, true that they won't know what's going on. But those days are becoming far and few now because of the budgets that need to be spent. You know, people like that don't know, it means that the consultant is actually not doing a good job, because it's not just about spending the money, it's the ratio on African male and African female that needs to be spent, you know. Like if you come from a manufacturing or a technical background, let's say, for example, in the electrical field, it's very hard to find African female electricians. You know, so the MD might say, I want you to spend on 10 apprenticeships on diesel mechanics. But it's very hard to find 5 of them to be women and 5 of them to be males.
And if it's not the right ratio, you're not going to win.
Yeah, so it is a bit of a problem as well that training managers don't know why what they're doing, basically. I deal with a lot of companies where they've got a they got an HR manager, but we do the WSP and we do the employment equity reporting for them. You understand what I'm saying? But the person is employed as an HR manager. You know, so it is common. It is common.
Keegen, I see you got here on the list importance of record keeping. Now, whenever I had a couple of meetings with you, and you joined some meetings, and that's something that always, when you start talking, you always started importance of record keeping. Why is that so important?
Okay. So the BE codes, one of the principles of the codes is a substance takes preference over legal form. Okay. And an example of this is, for example, a learnership. Let's say, for example, the company signed all the documents, signed the learnership agreement, did the training, but the SETA never registered the learner, right? So technically, it's not an official learnership. It's not a one-year qualification, but substantively, the company did everything that was required of a learnership. Hence, record keeping is important in terms of attendance registers, internal moderation reports to prove that they completed, having copies of the person's ID, an affidavit from the person stating, listen, yeah, I was unemployed before I started. So having documents in place to prove your claim is critical. It's critical. It's critical. That is the most important thing. I've been doing all training and stuff, but if there's no proper record keeping, then it's very hard for a verification agency to award points.
Keegen, could you just quickly just summarize those things? You said attendance registers. I know, so I don't know, I ask you now out of the blue, but just give us some documents, key documents, if you could just.
Okay. So if you're going to take an unemployed, if you're going to train an unemployed for BEE purposes, right? One of the first things what we advise that you do is let them fill in an affidavit to confirm that they're unemployed at the time of going on the training. Okay.
Okay.
That'll confirm employed. The second thing that you would need them to complete is an EEA1. That is a document from the Department of Labor. Can I just share my screen quickly? I'll find you one. If you give me a second. Where is it? Yeah. Got one open right here. Second, I'll find it for you now. Let me do this way here.
So the key is if there was a requirement to take that specific person up, like unemployment. So I need to concentrate on that word unemployment to have proof that he was unemployed. If it's a specific category.
No. You see, there's a requirement for spend on training, and there's a requirement to spend on bursaries. When you're spending on bursaries, it's for unemployed people.
Yeah.
Okay. So that is where the letter to confirm that they're unemployed comes in. The second document, sorry, it's called a EEA1. It's a Department of Labor document. If anybody wants it, they can WhatsApp, they can email me or send a message on the chat here with your email address. I can send you a template of what it looks like. Essentially, what this document is that the employee or the learner fills this in and they confirm their race and gender. The company may not say you're a white person or you're an Indian person. The employee or the learner must declare what they are.
Okay, quite interesting.
Yes. The next piece of information is your general SETA stuff that you would require to register a learner anyway, which is a certified copy of an ID, the proof of their highest education. Their CV is very important, especially from a BEE point of view. In terms of a lot of learners, like for example now, a client will pay for someone to go to training day on the 20th of Feb. Let's say it's for a one-day course, okay? But the client will only be audited in September 2022. Now the verification agency is going to say, we want to interview this person to confirm that they were trained. How are you going to get a hold of this person? You understand? They have to, part of their process to interview the person as well. So you got to be careful on who you train and that type of thing. I've had an instance where they couldn't find the guy. They just disappeared. So that is also important so that you have contact details for the person. And yeah, certified ID. Yeah, that's about it. The main documents that you need basically, and obviously assigned attendance registers. That is important.
Then I see you have on your list here internal training. So before we start, can you just explain to us what do you mean with internal training?
Okay. So my job to make my clients and clients' lives easier. All right. So people are under the impression that internal training. So what normally guys do is a percentage of your spend can go towards internal training. Things like toolbox talks, technical training, and those types of things. The problem with that is that the amount of time and the number of attendance registers you have to collect, the calculations that needs to be done, it's very, very time consuming for a lot of clients. So what I do for my clients is we'll say, look, there's one guy that's doing all this training. Let's do an addendum to his contract and specify that 10% of his time is allocated to training. What we then do is we pull out his payroll report for the year, his income, and we take 10% of that and we allocate that to skills development, rather than having to submit a whole lot of attendance registers. I mean, if you've got 500 staff or even 100 staff that has done half an hour training twice a month, that's a lot of paperwork. You know, the other thing that you can claim is, for example, let's say you're a financial manager and you're negotiating with a training provider to implement training at your workplace. So this financial manager, for example, has to source a provider, he has to get quotes, he has to make payments, he has to find the learners, all of those things. You can claim a percentage of his salary as a training coordinator. Which is done, and there'll be evidence of such. There'll be emails, there'll be signed quotes, there'll be they'll sign the learners the learnership agreement, so there'll be sufficient evidence to prove that. Okay, then you can also claim the salary of your company SDF. So sometimes it's easier to do that than to provide a whole lot of attendance registers and stuff. And then the verification agency wants to interview staff, and it becomes a bit of a nightmare. And it increases the cost of the verification. The more people that they have to interview, the more expensive it becomes. Okay, so you can claim the salary of the company SDF. But the proof you would require is that the person would have to be the registered SDF as per the WSP. If it's not, you can claim an external SDF's invoice amount to you. So if that external SDF claim paid you 20 grand, you paid an SDF external to do the WSP, you can only claim 20,000. But if you do it internally and you take 20,000 rand or 20% of your salary, that's a much bigger amount to claim. Do you not agree? So that is what you can do with regards to internal training. But again, it comes to documentation and having evidence. And it's a lot easier to prove these people doing these things than having the staff. And the biggest problem we have with internal training is that when the staff gets interviewed by the verification agency and they ask them, what training did you go on? And the guy says, nothing. It is common and it's scary, you understand? And then it opens a whole can of worms now, because people want, now the verification agency wants more proof. They want to interview more people. They want to see what was done. It just makes everybody's life difficult. So to avoid those types of situations, it is what's name? It is important, you know, and it is.
Now, like I say, whenever I start with B-BBEE, I always make sure I've got a bottle of Bernado's next to me, because B-BBEE is so complex. I'm just very happy I never went into the B-BBEE field. It is sometimes just too overpowering for me. Keegen, I see, and this is a next one is a very important one, importance of learner registrations. I know you spoke about this before, and a lot of people are lost out, if I recall. Can you tell us more about this, what you mean with learner registrations?
So one of the big issues we have, well, not so much me because I'm in control of it for my clients, is that when I get new clients, they have spent money on training with accredited training providers. So the provider has given them an invoice with a unit standard number and and proof of accreditation. But the problem there is, it's generally with short courses. It's not so much with learnerships and apprenticeships and those types of things. And what happens is these training providers do the training, get paid, but they don't actually register the learners on the relevant CETA database. Now, what then happens is that training is deemed as internal training because it's not accredited.
Okay, Keegen, can you just backtrack there with the what do you mean with the relevant CETA? I'm accredited with the P-CETA, and that learnership is the MER-CETA. So which one do you refer to now?
Okay, so this is also another issue. So that learner needs to be showed, there needs to show proof that the learner is registered on the MER-CETA database.
But I'm
Regardless of
P-CETA.
that doesn't matter. The company is a levy-paying member to MER-CETA. They report to MER-CETA. The WSP is in the name of MER-CETA. The learner is not registered with MER-CETA. If you're going to show me a P-CETA proof of accreditation, you understand? So that is one issue. And that's another thing that's also a major thing is that is who they registered with. You know, people are beginning to pick this up, especially with services CETAs and learnership agreements. They're giving a proof of registration or upload on services CETA database for a company that is with transport CETA. How's that possible? The learner is not actually registered. And the BE Commissioner is very clear on this because we've had an issue in the past where they've said, listen here, you're not getting your points. And because of that, and if you're not happy, you need to go sue the training provider for your money. Simple. That's what it comes down to. So there's no mercy for companies dealing with those types of training providers, so yeah. I've got a question here. Do you mind if I just read it? Well,
Yes,
read
yes,
it out.
go ahead.
My company has recently been accredited to train the new venture creation, NQF and NQF2 and NQF4 qualifications in the hope of producing more young entrepreneurs. If our client sponsoring learnerships offered grants to the highest performing learners at the end of the learnership to start their business, could this contribute to the SED points on the scorecard in addition to the SDL and tax incentives? Okay, the first thing is you cannot double count points. If a client has spent money on training staff, on the training, they can't claim it under donations, enterprise development, and skills development. Okay, they can spend a portion of that in terms of they can maybe take the stipend that they pay the learner under skills development, then that'll fall under headcount. They can take the spend on the training under either donations or enterprise development. So you can't double count, but yes, it can work as you say. Ideally, this is the whole point of BEE at the end of the day, and that's what it's about, essentially. I think I've answered that.
Thank you so much. You definitely have. So if the grant was at the end of the learnership and that was a separate subsidy to the cost of the training and the stipend. So say they were essentially investing in a new venture. Could it then contribute to SED?
So SED, yeah, we always do donations. That's what everybody knows about. But essentially, SED, and they're very strict now with regards verification agencies and the BE commissioner. They've been very clear about this. What they've said is, if you're going to spend money on adults, it needs to be in a way that will help them become part of the economically active population. In terms of they need to be able to get a job because of what you spend. So unfortunately, spending on animal welfare doesn't count. Spending on old people and that doesn't count. Okay. Spending on on feeding schemes don't count for BE purposes. And the logic behind this is that the BE Commission says that's your social economic responsibility. Not necessarily your corporate social responsibility is dealing with the aged and all of those things. So what I would do here, Jamie, is we'd look at what the budget is for skills, donations, and enterprise and supplier development. All right. And we'd work it accordingly, and I would say invoice each item separately. So, for example, if you wanted a portion of it to claim for your headcount for learnerships, you would have the people on the new venture creation on the company's payroll, where the company pays them their stipend directly, not through a third party. That would be what I would do there. All right. Their training cost, I would put that under social economic development. Okay. And your cost of the startup to the business would either go to enterprise development or supplier development. That's how I would do it. That would seem the most efficient way that I would do it.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Keegen, I see there's another question there.
Yeah.
From Charlotte.
Yes. So what claim with whom are you referring to in regards to the SDF salary? Okay. So when a company is audited by a verification agency, right? The verification agency they don't do this anymore. They'll just give you a list of documents and say, listen, we want this, 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 and this. But one of the things that you can claim for is the salary of a SDF, right? I'm gonna try and share my screen here. Let me just look here. So can I share my screen here with you, if you don't mind?
Yes.
There we go. All right. So the other things that's training, legitimate, recognizable training expenses is cost of training materials, the cost of trainers, the cost of training facilities, including costs of catering, scholarships and bursaries, school fees, course fees, accommodation and travel. And on the next page, we have administration costs, such as the organization of training, including where appropriate, the cost to the measured entity of employing a skills development facilitator or a training manager. Okay, so it's the last point at the bottom that everybody forgets about. So that is, and obviously now, how do you turn that SDF or the company SDF into a rand value? So what you do is the verification agency will ask the company firstly for the person's employment contract, confirm that that is their responsibility, right? So a lot of people are not employed as an SDF They're employed as an HR manager or some sort of HR field, right? Or an administrator, whatever the case may be, because that's where people progress. What we would then the verification, but there's no reference to an SDF in your contract. This is where we will ask the company to do an addendum to the person's contract to say, we are appointing you as the company SDF, which should have been in place anyway if you were going to submit a WSP to the CETA. There is a requirement as from a letter to confirm you the SDF anyway, right? Which should be in place. But that letter that you give to the CETA doesn't state how much of time you are spending on skills development functions. You see, so we will sit with the employee and say, well, how much of your time do you spend? They'll say, well, look, I spend 30% of my time on skills development. So the verification agency will then need to, like, let's say if they're measuring the financial period 1 March 2022, 28th of Feb 2021, they will ask for a payroll summary for that employee that's claiming to be the SDF. And that'll give you the salary for the whole year. Okay. What we then do is we take 30% of that salary and we allocate it to a training spend. But further to that, what we then have to do is, or the verification, well, I have to do it for them, but they're supposed to do it. They look at your employment equity reports and they see, well, look, 30% of your staff is African males. Then we take 30% of that salary amount and we allocate it to African males. If 10% of your staff is African females, we take 10% and we allocate it accordingly. That's how we use a SDF salary. And I think that's who needs it basically, is the verification agency. They're the ones that ask for this information, basically at the time of audit. I think that answers that question.
Yes, Keegen. I think a lot of us, we need to go back and change the job descriptions. That's something I never knew, and I think a lot of people is going to ask their companies to alter the job.
No, and this is what I'm saying. There's no need to change the job description. All you do is do an addendum to your contract.
Yeah.
Like your skills have been updated. All you do is you put an addendum to that and it goes in the employee file. And the employee signs it in the thing. There's no need to change your employment contract.
Keegen, next one, classification of learning interventions. Please explain.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen again. Right. So for B, we classify training a bit different. Well, I won't say classify it differently. The way we, the terminology used is a little bit different. Okay. So bursaries under BEE is under skills development, paying for someone to study at university. It also includes learnerships, by the way. Okay, because you are giving an unemployed person funding to go do their training. You, just like you're paying for their training, you're also giving them a living allowance, which is allowed. So how can it not be a bursary? Okay. There's a big thing on internships. Okay, and BE verifications are very sticky about this. We assume an internship under who has a, there's two types. It's basically work integrated learning and internships, right? And it's two different things. An internship is somebody that has a completed degree and requires 1 year, up to 1 year or 2 years workplace experience. Those are, or even 3 years in the case of attorneys and accountants and those types of people, right? Work integrated learning is someone that has completed all their theory, but require a set number of hours to do workplace experience before they get their degree. And there's a big difference between the CETAs and how we look at it as learnerships. Now, verification agencies have become very strict in terms of they want proof from universities to state that there's a specific time requirement for workplace experience. They generally don't allow it. The only place where you allowed an internship where it's not a requirement for your degree or any of that sort is in the IT space, because it is and I've got a client that does this. MICT, CETA have said that we've got all these graduates, these from universities, but they've got no experience in the workplace. So we have found that it's a problem that workplace experience is a critical skill or critical requirement, provided you have a structured program in place. And that is the only sector where they allow this type of internship where it's not a requirement. But again, you need to have evidence of such. Then you've got your learnerships, and under BEE, they categorize it twice. Again, I can share this document with you as well. Yeah, I don't have a problem with this. You've got work integrated learning, and you've got informal training, and you've got informal training twice. Now, I just want to show you how verification agencies work, all right?
Keegen, just before I see your bandwidth is a bit slow there, you're breaking up for a second or two. Is it possible to share this document? I see there's some interest from the other people. If possible, that we can share this document, if it's a public document, with the rest of the people later on.
Yes. Look, I just want to go through, this is very important to skills development facilitators in line with BEE, right? This is how a verification agency will determine whether it's a valid training intervention, okay? The company will make a claim that they've paid a bursary, right? So what the company will have is a signed bursary agreement between the learner and the company. They'll have the proof of payment. They'll have the affidavit to confirm the person is disabled, a copy of their ID, and proof of registration, right? So for it to qualify as a bursary, it must be institution-based theoretical instruction alone, formally assessed by the institution. Okay, so that is why verification agencies ask for the accreditation and they ask for certificates to see who issued the certificate. Delivery mode, institutional instruction. Learning site, institutions such as universities and colleges, schools, and ABET providers. Now, this becomes a big problem over here because verification agencies don't know much about skills development. So their thing is, look, if it's not from a registered university, we don't accept it. If it's not from somebody that is a college or has college in their name, they don't accept it. If it's not a school, they don't accept it. And they want proof here with your registration with the Department of Higher Education and Training. If your name doesn't appear on that list, they will not award the points. But subsequent to that, DHET and Ezra, you're aware of this, have released a statement saying that private training providers are deemed colleges. And there's not a requirement for us to be accredited or registered with DHET. So this is why I'm saying to you, learnerships can fall under bursaries. And the learning achievement is Recognize theoretical knowledge resulting in the achievement of a degree, diploma, or certificate issued by an accredited or registered formal institution of learning. This is what the verification agency needs to confirm before they award those points. And it goes down for each one like that.
Very interesting.
Okay, so yeah, I think that answers that question.
Perfect. Um, dealing with verification agencies.
Oh, it's a pain in the backside, eh?
I'm just happy I'm sitting on this side. I am not dealing so much with BEE because that's why I said when I started BEE, then I get a box of Banados because it's just too much.
Yeah, no, look, it's really, really difficult. And this is when STFs and training managers get roped in. I'll give you a typical example. I dealt with a verification agency in Joburg who were under the impression that because you have a learner on a learnership, right, that he is not part of their staff because they fall under a different section, rules of employment, you know, because it's a learning agreement. But I had to prove to them that it is an employee because they're registered on the company's PAYE. They can provide a IRP5 for that learner. And there is other legislation that states that they are an employee. So that can be a little bit difficult and tricky at times. So yeah. I don't know, Ezra, instead of people typing, do you maybe want them to ask a question? Because
Yes.
it's a lot easier to ask it than to type it out. It's very difficult to type the types of questions that they want to ask. It is
Now,
difficult. Even
anyone here that wants to ask Keegen a direct question? Just remember you're still muted, so if there's anyone that wants to ask a question, please just remember to unmute you first. And yes, Michelle.
Hi, I would like to know how can we contact Keegen if we have any questions?
Okay, so what we're going to do is we are going to take this video and we're going to upload it on YouTube. It will also appear on our website. And Keegan's full contact detail will appear on there. He's already forwarded to me. So you will be able to get all these documents from that. And we will also, Keegen, if you can share the document with me maybe a bit later on, that I can upload it with a video link and they can then download the document. So if you go to YouTube, please go to the comment section at the bottom. You'll see all Keegan's details will be on there, and there will be links on downloading that. Keegen, I think your document was new verification codes.
Yes, remember I printed, no, I've got the one with the codes. It's got what's the CETA, the legislation, the Skills Act. The Skills Act. It's got the Employment Equity Act. It's got a learnership rebate from SARS. It's got what else? It's got the ETI benefit. It's all in one document. So I can post them on I can share it with you via Dropbox, all those documents, and you can just upload it on there. But I mean, they're freely available documents, you know. It's just that I've put it in a book for my learners, basically. So yeah.
Is it possible to ask a quick question?
Yes, Jamie.
Thank you so much. Keegen, you've mentioned the various different stakeholders at companies, for example, HR manager, who's might be the SDF as well, and then the finance manager and that type of thing. As a training provider setting out on our journey and obviously wanting to pursue business development and that type of thing, who would you say the primary stakeholder is of whom it's best to target is in terms of having conversations around their skills development spend and thus whether they should go with you as a training provider?
Very simple. The person that's going to pay you. The person that's going to pay you. And it's the truth, really, because you know, a lot of these decisions on the amounts that need to be spent is made way before it comes to the whoever the training manager is, or it goes down the line. You know what I'm trying to say? So it's generally, because I'm sitting with a finance director and I'm saying to him, and the MD of the company, I'm saying, look, they're asking me, why do we need to do BEE? The question is, what do you have to lose? So what I do is I calculate their return. So I'll say to them, look, if you don't do BEE, you're going to lose 30 million Rand worth of work. And BEE is going to cost you R1 million. You choose whether you want to spend R1 million on BEE and keep the 30 million turnover, or are you happy to leave it? You know, for the sake of, because you don't agree to BEE and stuff like that. And what people fail to understand is it's obviously your jobs and people's livelihoods at stake. So this decision on how much to spend is made way before. It's got absolutely nothing to do with the STF at all, or whoever the training manager, or whatever the case may be. And then it's also looking at how to be efficient in scoring the most points also. So again, it's got nothing to do with the STF, because I, as a consultant, am saying you need to have 10 people on a category B, C, and D training. Now, if I knew nothing about skills, that's all I'm telling the client. I want this, 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 and this, you know? So at the end of the day, the financial manager who makes the decision and on who to get paid and who don't get paid, and the MD. So most cases, you can go see training managers, go give them nice presentations and everything like that. But generally, the decision has already been made. I mean, a lot of my clients don't even know that their staff don't even know that they have people on training. So I would, and I literally mean, whoever's going to sign the check or send off the EFT, that is the person you need to speak to if you want work. Because they know how much you need to spend on donations, what they're already spending on donations, and that type of thing. The only way you're going to get in there is if they've spent money on donations or enterprise development, and they've had a bad experience with either the beneficiary or the BEE verification agency. But generally, clients keep the same beneficiaries all along.
What a very interesting question there. Thank you, Jamie, for asking that. Anyone else that have, we still got a couple of minutes left. Anyone else has still got a question for Keegen?
Wait, I've got a thing to pose here. Sorry, while we're waiting.
Yes, yes.
One of the biggest issues we are having is the inefficiency of CETAs in terms of registering learners, providing us with learnership agreements. They're becoming more automated now. In terms of those old days, you just download a learnership agreement, fill it in, sign it off, and send it to them. Those days are coming to an end. Now you have to apply to them for a learnership agreement. And this has a major impact on BEE, because if you don't even have an agreement to fill in, how are you going to prove the learnership? It just makes everybody's life really difficult. Another thing we are finding is that learner registration with the CETAs is a nightmare. People are asking for proof of qualifications completed. We can't get that. So it's becoming it is a major issue with the CETAs as well. And again, here, there's ways and means to counter that, but it's about being proactive with the CETAs as well. That is important. Sure, somebody would have something to say about that. and having problems with the CETAs.
Yeah, Keegen, I think anyone else that still have a question for Keegen? I think, Keegen, you have nailed all the points and the questions and what everyone wanted. You selected the right topics today. Well done for that. And I'm sure a lot of us have things to think about, and we'll contact you after the session. Now, guys,
Sure.
just remember again that the video and Keegan's details will be available on our website and on YouTube. So if you have any questions or you want to review or see anything that he said, you're more than welcome.